Welcome back to another episode of Show and Tell Books. I'm Chantel,
I'm Amber.
and today we're talking about Daisy Jones and the Six. Basically, Daisy Jones and the Six tells the story of a fictional band that reached super popularity and then unexpectedly completely broke up after one tour, I want to say it was.
Yeah, one
So
tour.
Billy is one of our main characters, as is Daisy. She joins the band on tour. Billy is married and he's about to have a kid right when they go on tour. And then Daisy is introduced to it, and Daisy's very charismatic and very cool. So the hardest thing about Daisy Jones and the Six is Billy and Daisy kind of feel like each other is their person. Basically, like soulmates is what it's kind of hinted at. But Billy is also married. So then you're balancing this dynamic of his relationship with Daisy as they write songs together and his actual relationship with his wife, who is expecting a child.
So, in case you're new to the internet, Daisy Jones and the Six is being adapted by Hello Sunshine, Reese Witherspoon's company, for Amazon Prime, and it releases March 3rd. And we're really excited to see how the screen adaptation goes and what they change from the story and the book. But I think overall, the way it's written, I can't imagine them taking out very much to tell this story on screen.
Because it's written like in a documentary style, which is very much what Taylor Reed Jenkins excels at. But I loved it because it's like an interview portion. So the narrator is interviewing different members of the band throughout the book to help tell the story and push it along. So it's funny because you get like little snippets of like, oh, well, should I say this on camera? Or, I don't know if I should say this or things like that. So it's entertaining because you feel like you are reading a literal documentary.
Right. Which I loved. I thought her way of telling the story was very unique and really showcased the power of perspective and how that there's really more than one side always.
Yes. Yes. She is maybe not necessarily one of my favorite authors, but she's definitely one of the most unique authors out there because all of her books are written very much like a reality TV show, which is so fascinating and entertaining to read because there's no other author who does that. So I think it's really fascinating because with Daisy Jones and the Six, it is written so well that you don't actually know that they're not a real band. So they are based on Fleetwood Mac
Yeah.
and other bands of that time period. So, spoiler, Daisy Jones and the Six are not real. They are fictional.
Right.
But it's written in such a way that you honestly feel like it could have happened.
Yeah. Like there are definitely hints of the Fleetwood Mac dynamic and their story woven throughout Daisy Jones and the Six and other 70s bands like you talked about. And that I think is an attribute that will lend well to screen adaptation.
I agree. So we are obviously recording this before we watch the show. And potentially after we watch it, we might do another video of like what we felt went well and things like that.
I feel like the book, especially in the relationship Camilla has to the other female characters in this story and her relationship with Billy, showcases like feminism power to the nth degree. She's showcased as a strong, independent woman who knows her mind, knows what kind of treatment she should receive in a relationship, what kind of treatment is unacceptable. And she voices those opinions eloquently and with conviction, which I think we often miss in women's literature and romance literature. So maybe that's why it kind of lends more toward historical fiction than what you would expect. But she's just portrayed as a strong woman who isn't angry or vindictive, but understands the relationship that's happening between Billy and Daisy and voices her opinions about it and maintains composure in her interactions. Whereas some of the stuff we've seen in the trailer kind of lends more towards this angry portrayal, woman scorned, that you didn't really see in the book.
Which I think is really interesting because Camilla's one of my favorite characters because of her trust and her consistency in Billy. Because he, truth be told, in the past, does not necessarily deserve that trust.
Right.
Um, but it's so cool seeing how much grace she gives him and how much like, okay, I understand where you're at and I understand where you're coming from and I will help you work through it because we are in a relationship and us choosing each other, that is what a relationship is. So until you give me a reason not to, like I will continue to choose you.
Yeah.
Um, which is really powerful as a character. And I also think it's really cool because she does allow Billy and Daisy to work together. Like it's never a like vindictive or jealous, mentality or anything like that throughout the entire novel. However, the way the trailer is portraying it right now, and I know a lot of people on like Book Talk and the internet have been talking about this as well. Camilla appears like she doesn't trust Billy and that she doesn't like Daisy, when that is not the case. Daisy and Camilla actually did have a relationship and a friendship throughout the novel.
Well, and it's also going to be interesting to see how they handle the sixth member of the band because I can't actually remember his name. He doesn't appear that much in the book because he chooses not to be interviewed. And I think that's Taylor Jenkins Reid's kind of mastermind moment in telling this story of having someone who was involved and part of it choosing not to give their opinion and commentary on the events, lending like that's a period punctuation on how much perspective plays in the band's breakup and the development of the music that they play.
Well, it's fascinating because since it's told in like the documentary style, every single person in the band kind of has a different perspective as to why it broke up, which is extremely entertaining. Because one of them's like, well, because I was going to go solo. And the other ones are like, oh, it's because, we couldn't take it anymore. And anyway, point being, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm really hoping the way they film it is like with every chapter, it's all of a sudden from that character's perspective, as opposed from like, Billy and Daisy's perspective. I really hope they bring in the other characters and like have it as if it's their eyes watching the scene as like maybe they're narrating or whatever. I think that'll make itself really cool to watch.
Yeah. Well, and just to add like context to the story as well, the way the book is written, it's a documentary interview years after the band's fame and breakup. They're in their 70s, I think, when the interview is taking place. Whereas all of the trailers we've seen so far for the screen adaptation only show young characters. So I am kind of curious to see how they choose to handle that aspect of the story because there's kind of a plot twist at the end that we're not going to give away, but
Yes.
the timing of the interview plays into that plot twist.
Which I really hope they actually do something with the epilogue that we can't talk about. Because there's a lot of potential with it, especially if they do like if they include it in the screen adaptation. I think it could be very powerful.
I agree, especially because it lends more context to the female relationships that are talked about.
Mm-hmm. One other thing with it is you actually already know that they've actually changed some of the lyrics. So what's interesting is the book provides lyrics. So there have been, ever since it became popular, like tons of different bands on YouTube talking about it and singing and turning the songs into actual songs. So that's also kind of caused some slight uproar is the soundtrack that they have released already has different lyrics on a lot of the songs. So I think that's been interesting seeing, which again is why a lot of people are kind of nervous, but also like excited for this to see what else is going to change, but also like what they're going to keep.
Yeah. Well, and especially because the songs are such an important part of the story because the relationship between the band members are a major contributing factor to those lyrics, the changes that they took place from the draft of the song to the final song that was released or toured with. So for the production company to choose to change the lyrics, you're like, are they changing the story because those lyrics had meaning? And it's also encouraging to know that the actors portraying the band actually played the music and sang the songs. So
I didn't know that. That is cool.
I think that helps lend to the authenticity of the story being told, right?
Overall, like it's going to be really interesting seeing what they do to Daisy Jones and the Six. Like,
Yeah.
I am so excited to see what the Amazon Prime show turns out to be because it has so much potential. And obviously, like every book to film adaptation, you have to give it a little bit of leeway for creative license or whatever. I just hope that they do a good job because this was my favorite book by Taylor Reed Jenkins.
Well, and it's also encouraging because from what I've seen in interviews, she was heavily involved in the project. Reese Witherspoon was heavily involved in the project. So I believe the passion from those two will hopefully lend to a great product and adaptation.
Yep. Moral of the story is we're really excited to see what happens come March 3rd. Thanks for tuning in. Check out another video and don't forget to like and subscribe. See ya.